Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Heart of the Matter. I am Pastor Merrick, and I'm here with my beautiful wife, my colleague, my partner, my friend, my everything, baby mama, Pastor Tiffany. How you doing this evening, baby?
I'm tired, but I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. We're
All
trying
right.
to, be consistent. We can be transparent in this moment. We're trying to be consistent. We're starting a new thing. And so we're figuring out our new rhythms and timing. And, we got the girls downstairs eating Chick-fil-A and we just trying to figure it out. But at the same
Yes.
time, we want to be diligent and honor what we believe God has called us to do. And so that's why we are definitely making an effort to be before you this evening.
Absolutely.
One thing that we want to try to do every time we do this is to open up in a quick word of prayer. And so, babe, did you want to just do a quick word of prayer?
Sure. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this moment. Thank you for this day, God.
Yes, Father.
Thank you that we're just here and that we
Yes.
made it through the day, Lord. No matter how hard it may have seemed or challenging, God, we are here
Yes.
and we know it is by your grace. So, Lord, we just ask that tonight you just breathe on us, God.
Yes.
Speak your word, oh Lord. And God, let us just have a good time in you and to learn and to grow in you. It's in your matchless name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So tonight's episode is on the topic of covering, and this one is a topic that I believe is sometimes a little bit hard to talk about, but it's definitely timely. For those who don't know, we just recently started a series called On One, which is really working and thinking about getting people on one accord, believing that God has called us not only out individually, but called us to be able to come in and join together with others to make impact. And so, as we start to think about our individual journeys and what God is doing in our individual lives, sometimes individualism, though it's important to know God for yourself and have a personal relationship, can sometimes cause us to go a little bit too far and go into isolation. And when we go in isolation, that basically means that we just try to tackle things and go after things by ourselves. We don't want nobody in our business. We don't want nobody to have anything to do with what we got going on. Can't nobody give us any advice. Can't nobody give us any correction, any direction. We just like, yo, I'm YOLO out here, right? And so, so we just want to talk about covering. I think if you all know, we try to ground this biblically, and I know for me, I get an image um, of Elijah when he was in the honed out part of the rock, and God covered him as he was passing by. And basically, he didn't want him to see him because he knew if he saw him, he would die, but he wanted him to experience his presence there, right? Mm-hmm. And so he just covered while God went past. And I think that that's kind of this idea that covering sometimes looks like you're missing out on something. It sometimes looks like it's keeping you from experiencing the greatness of everything, but at the same time, it's really protecting you and it's keeping you from damage, from hurt, from harm. And so babe, I just want to tee it up to you. We see covering a lot of different ways. Sometimes people see it in church as pastors cover their flock. We see it in homes. Husbands and wives cover each other in the midst of their marriage. If you have a great boss, a great career situation, they're covering you at work. Friends cover each other. Like, what's your experience with either being covered or covering other people? And, what are some of the challenges with that and some of the things that people might want to just push back on and like, nah, that's not really for me. How much time do we
That's
have?
a loaded question. Yeah, that's always my thing. How much time do we have? So, okay, the first part, as far as
as just either your personal experience with being covered and some of the challenges that you've experienced in that.
So I think when it comes to covering, and it depends on which one we're talking about, right? But I think overall, if anything, I feel like it can be just having the initial covering can be like that's where things get a little tough. So sometimes having covering, you have to put your set your pride aside and say, hey, okay,
wow, pride.
I need help, or I need a covering, or I'm sharing something that I'm not, I didn't want to have to do, or I didn't want to have to ask for help. But so I think that's probably like the most challenging or the hardest part when it comes to covering. And I think like once you get over that and get over yourself and you're under the covering or under the umbrella of someone, it really is a beautiful thing.
Right.
Because it's a place of well, definitely should be a place of, no judgment, of
Right.
course,
Right.
but it's definitely a place of love,
Hmm.
a place of, true concern, real concern. Um, and yeah, and it's just a place that kind of helps you to grow, if
Yeah,
you will.
absolutely. And so like as a mother, what are some of the ways that you aim to cover our children? Um, and why is that important to you to make sure that they are properly covered? And what does that look like just from a practical standpoint, I guess, for people?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as a mom, it's definitely like I'm doing the everyday stuff. Like
Right.
if Emmy's about to like go down the steps, I'm like, wait, I'm like, let me put on,
You ain't there yet.
close
You ain't there yet. You're
this
right.
baby gate,
Yeah.
But like it's definitely, shielding the girls from some things that they may not be ready for,
Wow.
or some things that it's just too dangerous for them.
Wow.
A lot of times we get pushback and cries and screams and why, and
Yeah.
I can't, and I want it, and it's like, no baby, like you can't right now. Or it's
Right.
like something looks good and I'm like, it's actually really spicy and you're not
Right.
gonna like it.
Right.
And it's like, no, no, no,
Right.
So it's that, like in the everyday terms, but then it's also, covering them in prayer. So like, when I put them to bed, I, pray over them every single night. And
Wow.
I do that because I love them, of course, but I know they're not in a space where they can pray for themselves.
Wow.
And they don't really know what to ask for. I mean, they're growing and they're learning.
Yeah.
So Ava will say, "Oh God, let us have a good day and keep away from the danger."
The
And I'm like, "Yes, girl."
danger.
But those other prayers are things that they may not be able to see right now, being
Wow.
4 and almost 2. Um, as their mom, as they're covering, like I can see those things.
Yeah.
I
You have a purview
yeah,
that allows
yeah. I
you.
have a
Wow.
purview.
Yeah.
I've lived longer, so I know what's going on, or what,
Hmm.
what things can be expected.
So, like you just said a whole handful, and I just want to kind of just tease out a couple of things. One, I heard you talk about like protection, right? And so covering has this like protective thing where you said literally in the natural, you're trying to keep them from falling down the steps, touching stoves, eating spicy stuff or stuff that's not good for them.
Yes.
But then on top of that, you mentioned something something that they're not ready to be exposed to yet. So it's not necessarily something that's protecting them from danger or from hurt or harm, but it may be something that they can't handle yet. It may be
Absolutely.
TV shows that would give them nightmares, or
Mhm.
where it's not going to destroy them, but it may be something that would cause them to live outside of where they are right now in their stage of
Absolutely.
life, right?
Yep.
And I just when you were talking about that, it just had me think about the pushback that you mentioned and how God tries to do the same thing with us, probably, right? Like like
Absolutely.
something we're not ready to be exposed to, but we promise, we swear that we're ready for the next level, we're ready to
Mhm.
get to the bag, we're ready to get our careers popping.
Yep.
And it's just like one of
Yep.
those things where it's like, yo, we don't want to hold off, we don't feel like we need to. um you know I think we're coming up on Father's Day, and I just know my personal relationship, and I want to hear from you just with your father. um it always seemed to me that it seemed like he was like holding me back. Like I always felt, this, we talk about this all the time.
Yep.
Like it was just like, yo, just let it go. Like, let me go. Like I'm on a leash, and I honored him in that way. But it was definitely like, like Home Alone, Richard, Fletcher, Richard. Like every time I got
Yes.
home, and he was like, no, wait your turn and stuff.
I know.
And just trying to, and so it takes a lot of trust for somebody who's covering you to trust their timing, because it just feels like they're just trying to hold you back, and just, but I don't know, what's your experience, especially with your dad in that.
He was no different
Okay.
with me. And yeah, it was, for him being the my like real father, my
Yeah.
real
Right.
dad,
Right.
and then being my spiritual dad, like I got the covering
Right.
from all aspects. So yeah, there were a lot of times when I felt like, hey, I can do this and I'm that.
Yeah.
And like you said, he would just be like, no, just hold up, just, wait a second.
Yeah.
I remember my dad would always say this thing, like, if I would like say something, he'd be like, I know more than you. And that used to like get on my nerves. I'm like, what do you mean you know more than me? Even like as a grown person,
Right,
I'm like, I know some things too.
Yeah.
But and whether it was in ministry or just certain things that he had experience in that I may not have had yet, he did know more than me.
Yeah.
And so it's like I said, it's putting your pride aside, humbling yourself in a sense, not like in a but just in a way where you're like, you know what, okay, it's going back to the trust. Like I trust this person. I trust that even if we may not excuse me, see eye to eye, like in this moment, like I trust their judgment. I trust their experience, and I trust the God in them, because that's ultimately, especially from a spiritual aspect, that's what you're saying. You're saying,
that's good,
pastor, like, and my dad, like, daddy bishop, I trust the God in you. So if you're telling me to wait, if you're telling me no, or telling me not yet, I'm going to trust that God is speaking this into you to, to tell me. So.
That's the realest thing right there, is trusting the God in somebody. And we talked about this a little bit before we got on, is trying to have a sense of discernment about the people you allow to cover you, right? So it's like, do we ask and petition God about our coverings, not just in church and spiritually, which we should do, but people always wonder if they should join the church based off of the music, based off of how people have welcomed them, based off of the preaching, and all those things are important. But I think if we haven't stopped to pray about the discernment of whether or not this person, this pastor, will cover me in the way that God intended them, do they have God in them? That's definitely a question. But outside of church, I mean, do we ask that same thing about the places where we tend to work at, about the people we let into our children's lives, about the people who are friends? Like, how often are we checking to the temperature of whether or not somebody has God in them and we can trust them with that? I know for me personally, I can say that usually I pray that God honors the decision I'm already planning on making, as opposed to really asking him and waiting for confirmation. And I don't know if that's been your experience or if anybody's experience, but that's usually my experience. And so I'm often the person that finds out that somebody is not a good covering over my life well before I find out or test to see if it was before. I was blessed to be able to just so happen to join the church that your dad was pastoring. But you've known this, that there's been many experiences after that where I have, gone to work with other places and do other things. And it doesn't seem like okay, I probably should have thought about this more or prayed about it more. Or, sometimes we're going to take our bumps and our lumps, but just, how important is it to try to discern that? And what are some of the things you do to discern situations before you step into them?
So it's super important. Like,
right.
That's how I live my life.
Yeah. You very much so.
Like, I'm real in my feelings, but not like in my feelings type of way, but just I'm really in tune and very connected with my feelings, and kind of like, like you said, checking the temperature.
Right.
And so I do feel like I have a high level of discernment. But I think so partly it's, I'll say, God given, but then the other part is based off of experience and observation.
You said it.
And so whether it is a situation where it's a job, or having certain people in your life, like, I think it's good you have to do your research.
Yeah.
If it's like a person in your life, not like you're Googling them. I mean, you can like look. I will Google somebody in a heartbeat.
All your information, but, quick heartbeat. Yes.
But just really taking the time to get to know them.
Yes.
And knowing them, observing them.
Right.
Seeing what their patterns are, seeing what their habits are.
Right.
Same like if you're looking for a job, like, okay, if you're interviewing, asking the right questions, how does it look in here? How do y'all, how do y'all
What's your
keep the
retention?
temperature?
Oh, that's
Like,
you
I
talking
think
about
about like, is it cold? Like,
yeah.
I'm freezing in this office, or whatever the case is.
Right,
It's
right.
super small,
No, but yeah, I feel you.
but I think it's asking the right questions. It's observing,
Yeah,
and then prayer, because it's discernment. People talk about discernment all the time,
yeah,
and it's not just a thing where it's like, okay, God, like I'm praying for it, and then it's just gonna just wait, and then just
yeah,
like a lightning bolt is just gonna
yeah.
come down,
It's
and
like
like,
active discernment.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like it's still moving, even if you have to move kind of cautiously in something,
Hmm.
but it's still it's a little it's God, and then it's you still making some moves too.
Yeah.
But I think it's healthy to ask questions to figure things out. So at a work, at a relationship,
Yeah.
church, all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the idea about covering the beauty of it is that yes, in many regards it does feel very restrictive. It feels like somebody is just keeping you from being great, from living your best life. But I think on the other hand, if we were just to try to take inventory and look back, there's probably so many instances where we should have gotten something much worse, a outcome, a consequence much worse than what we did. And those who were covering us, they kind of lightened the blow a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I know there's been million times when my own father has stepped in and, helped us with this bill because we mismanaged money, or, helped us to be able, even right now, like we're trying to figure out a car situation. He's like, you could borrow my car. Like, just being able to step in, and where the consequence should have been much worse, you have somebody who is not only allowing you to grow, but it's also keeping all of what could have happened to you actually happening to you, or whatever, right? Like, I think about in the Bible where God, so David, he sleeps with Bathsheba, has Uriah killed, and then Nathan comes and gives him some correction, or helps him to realize his wrongdoing. And even though David is punished for that, he has turmoil in his own home. The reality is that outside he still was able to stay king. It's not like the news got out and everybody and their mama was like, off with his head or something like that. Like he was able to make a mistake, and he had to be punished, but he got punished by the one who loved him rather than being punished by people who didn't love him. Yeah. And I think punished, that's
aka correct.
Yeah, exactly. Corrected. Yeah, that's a better word. Disciplined, or whatever you want to use. So I think the dope part about that is that we can find value in covering as well in that way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know. What are some of the things that that you would implore people to do in this next phase of life? If someone is trying to figure out if they even need to have that type of accountability in their life, maybe they feel like everything is going great. Maybe they feel like they've got it under control. They started the business. They got the kids handled. They feel like their marriage is going well. Why is it still important for them to try to seek out some type of authority figure, covering, some type of guidance, some kind of person or group of people to provide boundaries? Like, why is it still important, even though you feel like everything is going great?
Yeah. I think for a couple of reasons. I mean, for one, I just think, anything that we do, it's better that we don't have to be alone, like, and do it, and then most importantly, like, we can't do it alone, even as much as we think we have things under control and we've got things together, and it's like, okay, I'm cool, I'm this. It's like, sooner, it may be in that moment where you think you have it together, but it's going to come a time, excuse me, a time will come, and things are going to unravel. Unravel. Yeah, I didn't want to say fall apart, but they will unravel, and it's not any slight on you as a person or your choices, but it's just, we weren't meant to do life alone. And for anyone that thinks that, and I know people have their reasons for thinking like, oh, well, I gotta do this by myself, or I'm good over here.
Right.
Usually that comes from some sort of trauma or hurt that they've experienced.
Wow.
And that's what I've kind of noticed.
Lean into that a little bit, the trauma piece.
Yeah. So I just feel like, right, sometimes when we experience something, so it can be, something where somebody, they betrayed you, or someone, lied to you, or lied on you, or someone didn't keep their word. They said they were going to, do this and look out for you, and they didn't. Then that's a lot of times like those experiences, we internalize that. And it's like, okay, well, I know I can't rely on you.
Right.
You said that you were going to be here. You promised that if I did this, then like you would be there. And then that's when it's like, then we say, no, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good. And then that's when we want to do things on our own, because again, that trust, having to go back and trust people,
right?
Now, or trust a business, trust a place of work in your last job, like just toss you aside.
That's so
or trust
real.
To be at another church when your last church was like doing some really foul stuff and wasn't there to support you in your real time of need.
Right.
It's like, why? Like, I'm good. I don't need a covering. I
can do bad all by myself.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Dang, that's so real. And so it feels like it's like a mental piece to it then too, where, and I just say it in the sense of like, we can overly spiritualize everything, but the reality is that there's some things about us, just like if there was an issue with our heart or issue with our, lungs or something, we wouldn't just say like, oh, we're just going to just keep doing what we've been doing, and then, or do, try to avoid what got us in that condition. We're going to actually go seek help from a doctor to fix that. And we're also going to change our behavior, that anything that may be contributing it. Both and. Right.
It's a season of both and for me.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm just
both
and.
Exactly. Exactly. And so in this instance, yes, like I'm going to go talk to somebody about my church hurt, about my friend betraying me, about my job letting me go unexpectedly. And then I'm also going to try to dip my toe back in, but this time I'm going to come with a level of discernment in some of the things that you talked about, and make sure that the things that God wants for me are being nurtured at certain places. Because you can always tell, they always say like plants grow based off of the environment that they're put in. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to be better discerners of environment, as opposed to just onesie-twosie things. So if I'm, as a pastor, if I say something wrong to somebody, or if I do something, I'm human and I'm trying to figure it out. Try not to judge me fully just off of that interaction, but sense the environment. Like, is this an environment where the pastor can admit that he's wrong and actually apologize and continue to try to rebuild trust? Is this an environment where people can be honest about what they think? Or is this an environment where everybody sweeps everything under the rug, acts like nothing happened, and it just keeps it moving, right? Yes. Like, it's because that, to me, that doesn't sound like covering. That sounds like cover up. Like, you know what I mean? And so, we need to to discern those things. And so here we are. We're pushing on the last couple minutes of tonight.
Yeah.
You want to pour heart?
I will say this too, because we do actually have a few more minutes because we started a little bit.
Oh, we did. Yeah, so, you're right. Come on.
To like 7:05.
All right. See,
but
boss.
I'll say this too, because as we're speaking a lot from the perspective of someone being covered, but there's a lot of us who have to cover other people. And we have to be okay with where they're at.
Right.
We have to meet them where they're at.
Right.
So I think a lot of times people who are doing the covering can get frustrated if someone's like, if they don't trust them right away, or if they don't like take heed or take their advice. And we have to give those people grace, because we don't know what they've experienced, or what hurt, or what trauma. And so what you don't want to do as someone who has to cover somebody is to then like toss them aside because you're frustrated because I told you to do this and you're not listening and you don't trust me. It takes time to build trust, to build relationships.
That's real.
Because it, just rebuilding that takes time. So I think it's good for those who cover others. So like I said, if you are a parent, if you are a manager at your job, if you are a leader at your church, just give grace. It takes patience. It takes time, but
Absolutely.
When you're willing to put in the work, to have that relationship with someone and to be there as a covering, it can be a beautiful connection.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think just exactly what you said about the patience of that. I feel like God does that too. Like, we see in the Bible so many immediate stories where it's like, the angel came and then you were like, and then like Mary said, yes, Lord, whatever you want to do with me. And it was like, it seems so immediate, right?
Right.
But I think I've interpreted moments like when Moses, why God, I was always ask myself, why did God make him go through the plagues? Like, why not just get it done and over with, right? Like,
Yes.
but I think in that moment, I think part of it is God wanted to build trust with Moses because he knew the journey that they had after Egypt, right? So he wanted Moses to be able to know that if I tell you frogs are coming, they're gonna come. And then if I tell you flies are coming, they're gonna fly. You know what I mean? And if I tell you that blood's going, water's gonna turn to blood, that's what's gonna happen. And so Moses is building his spiritual muscles because we know exactly how much he didn't have that. He was hesitant too in the beginning,
Absolutely.
right? As soon as God came, he was hesitant. And so I love the fact that God was willing to show up over and over and over and over again before he expected Moses to be able to part the sea. He was like, I'm going to show up in Egypt first, right? Yep. And I think like to your point, which I think is perfect, leaders, people who cover people have to give people that great, that time to build relationship, right? And so
absolutely. I mean, and we talk about that all the time, just like, because it's just like, and maybe it's a thing with me, but I just feel like if you don't have like a relationship with someone,
don't try to tell me what to do.
Yeah,
right. don't try to correct me.
We have like no type of relationship whatsoever, and then
out of the blue,
out of the blue, I'm expected to just follow suit or just whatever when there's nothing here.
Yeah,
and sometimes people forget that they're so what's the word I want to say? They're so not comfortable, but they're just so fixated on their position so that they think that, okay, well, because I'm in this role, I can say whatever and it's going to be taken as Bible and as truth. And it's like, but do this, like, for me, I just don't I'm just not taking
absolutely
anything anybody says if I don't even know you, like, or know, like, anything, there's no connection.
Absolutely. And that's what people forget. Like you said, their title gives authority, but it doesn't give access.
Wow.
And you don't want to misinterpret your level of authority with your level of access to somebody.
Absolutely.
Because somebody may do what you ask them to do, but it does not mean that they have given you rights or any type of level of ability to truly cover them. Because covering to me is different than being just obedient to what you say. I'll do what you tell me to do. Like, oh, okay, you want me to move that table, blah, blah, blah. That's me giving you direction and you doing what I say. Covering allows you to be able to be exposed and open and willing to be transparent with me. It's you coming back to me as you're covering, being like, hey, I messed up. Hey, I don't know the next step. Hey, I'm struggling with this. And I think that's the part that that we miss a lot of times when we are people who automatically are in places of authority, and that we just automatically think that our position gives us access to people, and it doesn't. And so you hit it right on the head, babe.
That is true.
Yeah.
Authority and access.
Yeah. That's so real. We want to hear from you all. We've seen some comments and stuff come up, but by all means, keep commenting, ask us questions. We are trying to figure out, what are some great conversation topics that are touching you right now that, are on your tongue, or you and your girlfriends are talking about, you and your fellas are talking about, because we want to kind of give insight and at least, discuss them. And so, as you engage, we want you to, continue to let us know what you want to talk about. Babe, do you have any final words you want to share with the people? Pour your heart out. Any thoughts, anything whatever?
I mean, nothing that's too, profound or anything like that. No. But I just know personally, like, the whole discernment piece has just been really big for me in this season of my life. As you're aware of. Yeah. So just whatever you do, like however you move, when it comes to discernment, like I said, just pray, observe. That's and good. I said something else. I said pray, observe, and then just kind of like ask questions, right? That's what it was. So pray, observe, ask questions. That's how you'll really get to know what is for you, what's not for you.
That's good.
And at the end of the day, I I think a lot of us now are in this place where we are searching for peace.
Man.
So whatever is going to bring you peace, and
Right.
you know what will bring you peace.
Absolutely.
Because only you can feel it, only you can tell, only you can say that. But I feel like discernment is the journey to your peace.
It is. It is. And you touched on something, you may not have realized it, but at least what I took from it was discerning, since you called it a journey, is not just at the beginning of the process. It's something that you continuously do. There have been relationships that have been at play at years in our lives that we've continued to try to discern, and just being like, God, is this the person? It's not just that, oh yeah, just in the beginning I signed up, and then after that, God, I got it from here.
So a person, or like, a position,
right,
like
right,
all
absolutely.
of that stuff. And you have to, each step or each time, like, because like things are always going to change, things are always going to shift. And then some things may have worked in this beginning part of it that now, like,
seasons change.
Seasons change. And again, you have to be very discerning about it and say, okay, Lord, like, is this the place where I should be? Is this the person that I need to be connected with? Is this, whatever that is.
Right.
But I just think discernment is a path to peace. So may you find your peace this week.
Peace be with you this week.
Yes.
We love you all, and just thank you all for riding with us. We are going to have our virtual service this Sunday, so please join us back here. Virtual only. If you show up at Crescendo, there may be an orchestra or something going on there. We ain't going to be there. So join us on Facebook and YouTube then. And also, as always, join us every Wednesday for Heart of the Matter. Love you guys. Peace.
Blessings.
Bye.